see, I turned pro as of 1992, so the UFC did not even exist.
Right.
So I was pursuing professional scene on the independent scene, I'll say sort of haphazardly. I used my real name, and I used my real amateur credentials. I got fortunate enough that a couple of different wrestlers were like, "Is that stuff legit?" I said, "Yes, it was." They said, "You ought to be over in Japan doing this thing called the UWFI." And so basically, I used to always carry business cards and resumes, so I was out looking for jobs. And so I passed off that. A couple of days later, I get a phone call. I think 2 weeks later, I'm down in Nashville, Tennessee for a tryout. And basically, a couple months later, here I am in Tokyo, Japan. Don't have a clue as to what I'm doing. All I know is that my Asian opponent was basically teeing off on me.
Right.
I mean, really teeing off on me,
Right.
because there was this
hybrid.
Their philosophy was, if you don't feel it, you don't sell it.
Right.
And
Was that a shock?
he was, I think he wanted to make certain I really felt it.
Right. And then I'm sure he felt it.
Yeah. When he laid into me like that, I'm thinking, boy, I really can't say what I want to say there, but I'm thinking, that's enough of this. Right. And I simply just thought, I just basically just cut the match kind of short. I just charged him basically, and I just did a aerial display with him, just flinging him from one side and to the other, because he was such a smaller opponent that I was able to throw him this way, throw him that way. And then the crowd, I was just so caught up into, I'll say, a bit of anger at that point.
Right.
And the crowd was just going nuts because they had never seen anybody get ragdoll like that in the process. Match is all over. And the Japanese/English interpreter, he's like, "Dan Severn, you will become superstar in Japan." I'm like, well, I don't know about that superstar thing, but I go, I'm not going to let anyone just simply just tee off on me like that without giving them the old proverbial receipt.
Right.
So, I'll just say that, again, a couple of road agents, they're pitching, and the cycle of a professional wrestler, whether you're a baby face or a heel, you're going to be one or the other at some point in time in your career, and I understood this, and so now they're pitching me this idea that they want to put this, just like you said, 666 across the forehead, make the Undertaker disciple, stuff like that. And as they're starting pitches, I put my hand up like a T, and I make the little whistle sign, timeout. Not going to happen. I live in small town USA. I don't want to have any repercussions to my family, nor toward my businesses, nor towards me. I go, because you don't realize how many people actually buy into this.
Sure.
And now, like, when the road agency's like, well, Dad, we could start using you poorly. And I'm like, going,
that's a threat.
Again, I go, well, what do you mean by that? He says, well, we can have you start losing matches. I go, you could ask me to lose. But where does it say anywhere on this piece of paper I have to lose to anybody? So what are you going to do when I walk out into your world of fantasy and turn fantasy into reality? How many of your so-called stars am I going to make look rather silly?
Mine was a little bit different because pro wrestling and fighting really transitioned together. Because when I started pro wrestling, I was doing Nelson Roy, then I was over in Japan, and then a friend of mine, Dean Malenko, came to me, and we were working on a tour together, and he showed me a tape of these guys fighting, and this was the UWF, the hybrid wrestling that they were doing. And I was like, dude, I want to do that. And he goes, no, man, those guys, that's hybrid wrestling. Those guys are really hitting each other, they're kicking each other. The ending's predetermined, but they're going after one another. And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And so that's where I went down to his dad's. I did the tryout, went down there. I tried out down there, got just tore up down there. I never lost, right? I was always a tough kid. But I just got torched down there. I mean, just so much experience that they had. And so I was like, man, I want to do this. And so I ended up getting to go back and do it. For me to go from pro wrestling, because that was a hybrid. So Funaki and Suzuki and myself wanted to kind of know what it would be like, because we were excelling so much, right? And we felt like some of the guys we were working with, we were having to put them over, but it was like, man, it's like we couldn't really let go. Like we were always in control. Like we couldn't really just go and be us. And so we asked ourselves the question, what would it be like if we turned pro wrestling real? What would it look like? And that's when we came up with the pancrase. Basically rope escapes, like wrestling, open hand strikes, like supposedly wrestling, and then the kicks, punches, throws, all of that stuff, right? And so we came up with that. I think that the shocking part of it when we did our first event was that because we wanted to know what that would be like we literally just said, okay, the endings are not going to be predetermined like the UWF was, but it's going to be real all the way to the finish. The thing that didn't really sink in was how fast the fights would go.
Right.
And that was the whole change from the pro wrestling into the actual fighting.
How did someone go over?
Well, in UWF, when you talk about going over, it's usually because the ending is already predetermined.
Well, I mean,
to somebody
in
winning.
Pancreas.
And Pancreas went over huge.
But how did you win or lose? Was it a point system?
No, you either knocked the guy out, or you submitted him, or the guy went to the ropes 3 to 5 times, depending on the
Wow.
time limit.
Yes.
So there was a lot of ways for you to stay in the fight a lot longer,
Right.
which worked out. But the thing with that was I always felt like that gave you had to be well-rounded in your stand-up, and you had to be well-rounded on the ground.
Right.
Because of all the escapes that you would get, would give you a whole lot more opportunities, especially in the real style. Gave you a lot more opportunities to be able to, get a second opportunity. Like, for instance, if a striker was punching and he kept getting taken down, well, usually in what we were doing with the UFC and all that, you get taken down, they're done.
Right.
Well, this gave him 5 opportunities to be able to land a shot. So
Right.
it really forced you to be well-rounded.
Right.